Coming soon to audiobookey.com.
5 years ago, and 3 weeks after undergoing a complete hysterectomy, on a spring morning, my dad brought a load of stuff from Costco because I couldn't make it to the store. He brought by all of our favorite things. My dad brought my brother's kids with him, so the kids played with my 4 children running in and out of our house, playing on the swings, on the trampoline, and in the house and whatnot. I came down the stairs and into the kitchen to give my dad a hug and to say hello to my nephews. While I was down there, I got tired pretty quickly and decided to go back upstairs. And as I was walking through the living room, I had the impression, why don't you just sit here on the couch while they're here? So I did. A short time later, about maybe 5 or 10 minutes, a sudden, strong impression came over me, and I knew in an instant there was something wrong. I heard a voice tell me that my nephew and my daughter were alone. I said to my husband, "They are alone. Find them now." He saw the look on my face, and he must have felt it too, because he ran downstairs and he found them. They were in the basement, and the nephew had built a fort. My daughter was only 3 at the time. My older brother was in prison, and she was 3. This cousin had built a fort, which is where my husband found them. And when my daughter came upstairs, she was walking kind of funny. My dad had come out of the kitchen when I told my husband to go get the children. He saw the look on my face and immediately gathered up my brother's boys and left. He had already sent the other 2 boys out to his car when those 2 came upstairs, and I saw my daughter walking funny. As soon as they left, I went upstairs to my room to climb back in bed. My children were running about playing, and I called my daughter in to me. She climbed into bed with her blankie and snuggled up against me and went about sucking her thumb. Guided again by God and what little I had learned in all my years of therapy, I was able to question her carefully without using any sort of leading questions. She told me what had happened in the basement. What she told me was that her cousin had made a fort and asked her if she wanted to play school. Before they started talking about their body parts, he said, "There are some rules at school. At school we can't yell. We have to raise our hand if we want to talk, okay? So no yelling for your mom for anything, or your dad, okay?" And my daughter told me that's why she didn't yell, but that he touched her. And the way that she said it was, "He touched me on my privates, and that wasn't okay, Mommy, huh?" And I said, "No, it wasn't. It wasn't okay. But I'm very proud of you for telling me, honey. I'm so proud of you. And I promise to never, never let that happen again." And she snuggled back into me and sucked her thumb, nodded her head up and down like she had just bumped her knee, and I had just kissed it better. A few minutes later, she jumped off the bed and went out into the hallway where her older brother and sister were, and she told them exactly what had happened, and then she went back off to go playing. The older children turned towards me with their eyes wide open, but didn't know what to say. I told them that I was really proud of Lily for telling us, and that I would make sure it didn't happen again. They turned around and followed her to go play, and my husband came and stood in the doorway. He looked at me, I looked at him, and I had tears streaming down my face. He said, "What happened?" And I told him. I'm pretty sure he felt about as sick as I did. Maybe not quite as sick. He had an idyllic childhood, but it hurt. When he asked what we should do, I told him that I'm going to call my parents and talk to them. He said, "Okay," and he closed the door. I had the phone book in front of me, and I had opened the phone book to try and find the number to call and report what happened. I opened the front cover, and it said in big, bold letters, "You are legally obligated to report any knowledge of abuse or neglect or suspected abuse or neglect." As I read this, and I picked up the phone, and I called my parents' house, and my dad answered the phone. I started to tell him what happened, and he cut me off and said, "Just a minute, your mom wants to talk to you." My mother is a licensed clinical social worker, or LCSW. She picked up the phone, and I told her what happened. I said, "Shouldn't we report it? The front page of the phone book says we're bound by law to report any knowledge or suspicion of child abuse or neglect, so we need to call, right?" And my mother said, "Let me ask the nephew what happened first, and I'll call you right back." So I sat on my bed with the phone book, and I waited for her call. When the phone rang, I picked it up, and I heard the words that would put my husband, children, and I onto a path that I could not have imagined. She said, "I asked the nephew about what happened to your daughter, and the nephew said nothing happened. And Nicole, I believe him." I hung up the phone, and in that very instant I made the decision to make sure it would never happen again. I picked the phone back up and I dialed the number that was listed in the front of the phone book. I said, "I need to report something. My daughter's been molested. What do I need to do?" As I listened to the caseworker, my hands started to shake and a lump formed in my throat. As he answered questions, I answered them. Then he asked for my availability. He said we needed to take my daughter to the Children's Justice Center of Ogden, Utah, so that she could be interviewed by a social worker. We made the appointment for the following Thursday. As I hung up the phone, I looked back up to my husband, who had returned to the doorway. I covered my eyes with my hands as the tears started to fall. Then I relayed the phone conversation. I took my hands back off of my eyes to look at him and asked, "Did I do the right thing?" His face was pale, but his eyes were clear and attentive, and in a somber yet steady voice, he said 4 words, "Yes. Yes, you did." He walked over and gently kissed the top of my head and said, "Why don't you lay down and rest? I'll go check on the kids." I gently and slowly leaned back while holding a pillow over the 6-inch incision to avoid any physical pain. Yet as I put my head down on the pillow, I felt a different kind of physical pain. It was as real as any pain from my incision, but so unexpected and sharp that it took my breath away. It was a silent pain, yet so big it could have filled the whole room. But it didn't fill the whole room. It was all located deep inside of my chest. For the first time in my life, I felt the very literal pain of a heart breaking. What began in my heart that day would eventually touch each and every corner of my life. It would become countless experiences. It is what I have called breaking.